Learning Stations in the Secondary Social Studies Classroom by Leah McCauley. Howdy, my name is Leah McCauley. I'm a mom of 2 boys, wife, graduate student by night, and an 11th grade U.S. history teacher by day. I'm always looking for new strategies to use in the classroom, but sometimes wonder just how effective these strategies are. Enter Action Research Superhero, or Christopher Reeves because he's arguably the best Superman. The purpose of my action research project is to evaluate the effectiveness of learning stations in the secondary social studies classroom. There is a huge push for student-centered learning, and this study explains how learning stations is one of those effective, fun, and student-centered strategies for the secondary student. Before going into the belly of the research, I would like to define some definitions. The first definition is learning station. Sometimes these are called learning centers, station activities. These are engaging, differentiated, hands-on, student-centered, which are physical spaces in the classroom. Learning stations are different areas of the classroom that have differentiated pedagogical strategies in each area, which include an overarching topic or concept that is to be taught in a student-centered environment. The next term is International Baccalaureate History of the Americas, otherwise known as IBHOA. This 11th grade course teaches students to compare different regions of the world while teaching international mindedness. Teachers select 3 to 4 topics to teach each year, to which they go into great depth. However, even though this is an advanced course and program with a special curriculum, since I teach at a public school, I am still required to teach the state curriculum as well. The next term in my paper is growth. I define this as an improvement of the pre- and post-quiz grades. By measuring the changes in student performance on assessments, I am able to see an improvement or decline of student scores. Therefore, an increase or improvement in scores would show growth. The last definition I'd like to define would be block schedule. This is 4 classes per day, which alternate over a 2-day period and are approximately 90 minutes long per class. For example, A day would have periods 1, 2, 3, and 4. B day would have periods 5, 6, 7, and 8. Which means teachers only see their first period class every other day. When deciding on my focus for my action research, I developed the following research questions. 1. How do secondary level students feel about their use of station activities? 2. What is the impact of station activities on students' ability to recall the information? 3. How do station activities affect the ELL, ESL, SPED, at-risk, and GT populations? 4. Did IBHOA and on-level U.S. history classes show significant growth in their quiz scores? I conducted this study with my 11th grade U.S. history classroom and IBHOA class with an age range between 16 and 18 years old. Due to the amount of absences, tardies, and on and off school suspension, the number of students who completed the study was approximately 100 students, which is a decent amount. I gave the students a pre-test to test their prior knowledge of the Vietnam War. This was important since I needed to be sure the majority of students had little prior knowledge of this event so I could measure my students' growth after the station activities. In reviewing the pre-quiz scores, this proved that most students knew very little with an average score of 38 in my U.S. history classes. However, my IBHOA class, which has a large portion of my GT students, scored high. The learning stations are differentiated and were over 11 key terms that I wanted the students to know. In Station 1, students use a sentence strip summary technique. The students are to look for 2 or 3 of the most important ideas of a paragraph and write a 1-sentence summary. Once all students in the group have completed this, they will then compare and contrast their summary sentences and create a new summary sentence for the group. In Station 2, the students are to use hashtag summarizations. The students summarize an excerpt with hashtags to help students narrow their focus of a particular topic. This sounds like a simple technique for students this day and age, however, they struggled with this activity. Students will complete an overarching research question which pertains to the topic. Finally, students will use the Frayer model, which includes the key term definition, visual representation, examples, and opposites of the term. In Station 3, the students used primary source documents to answer questions. They captioned a variety of photographs from the time period. They created a compare and contrast T-chart and participated in some investigative reading. As a group, the students were to work as a collaborative team and choose to create either a rap or a song, a Snapchat, or a poster that pertains to the anti-war movement. In Station 4, the students were to use graffiti vocabulary, which means they were to use bubble letters for the vocabulary term, add a description of the term in their own words, and draw images to represent the term. They were then to use the Freyer model on a separate term. After the stations, I also had students take a survey to let me know what they liked, what they didn't like, what they thought was helpful. I think this was important since I like to know their likes and dislikes so I can better my future practices and keep them engaged in the learning. The following class period, which is roughly 48 hours later, students took a randomized version of the pretest. This post-test showed growth in most of my students. My ESL LEP students went from an average score of 38 to 73. My SPED population did very well with the learning stations, with grades going from an average of 41 to 64. I saw a 33.4% growth in my U.S. history classes, which is within a 1-point range of all the subgroups. However, I showed a 25.7% growth in my IB/HOA class. This is due to the large number of GT students who are in my IB class that scored high on both the first and second test. Out of the 98 students who I collected data on for both days, the average grade for the pre-quiz was a 45, and the average grade for the post-quiz was a 78. After reviewing the results, I can confirm that the learning stations were in fact helpful in the retention of new knowledge. By giving students the pre-quiz as well as the post-quiz the following class period, it showed the retention of concepts learned during these station activities. According to the online student survey taken after the completion of the learning stations, the majority of students liked the activities and would rather participate in learning stations than simply writing notes and vocabulary from a book or PowerPoint. In the end, this research showed significant growth in the majority of students, as can be seen in the graphs provided. As student-centered learning becomes more prevalent in schools, I hope that this research will be helpful to teachers and administrators to create a utopian, student-centered environment in the secondary social studies classroom.